February 16th, 2025. The 61st Munich Security Conference, the world's leading forum for talking about international security policy, took place from February 14th to February 16th this year. Begun in 1963, it was designed to be an independent venue for experts and policymakers to discuss the most pressing security issues around the globe. At the conference on Friday, February 14th, Vice President J.D. Vance launched what The Guardian's Patrick Wintour called a brutal ideological assault against Europe, attacking the values the United States used to share with Europe, but which Vance and the other members of the Trump administration are now working to destroy. Vance and MAGA Christian nationalists reject the principles of secular democracy and instead align with leaders like Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. They claim that the equal rights central to democracy undermine nations by treating women and racial, religious, and gender minorities as equal to white Christian men. They want to see an end to the immigration that they believe weakens a nation's people, and for government to reinforce traditional religious and patriarchal values. Vance attacked current European values and warned that the crisis for the region was not external actors like Russia or China, but rather the threat from within. He accused Europe of censoring free speech, but it was clear, especially coming from the representative of a regime that has erased great swaths of public knowledge because it objects to words like gender, that what he really objected to was restrictions on the speech of far-right ideologues. After the rise and fall of German dictator Adolf Hitler, Germany banned Nazi propaganda and set limits on hate speech, banning attacks on people based on racial, national, religious, or ethnic background, as these forms of speech are central to fascism and similar ideologies. That hampers the ability of Germany's far-right party, Alternative for Germany, or AfD, to recruit before the upcoming elections on February 23rd. After calling for Europe to change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction, Vance threw his weight behind AfD. He broke protocol to refuse a meeting with current German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and instead broke a taboo in German politics by meeting with the leader of AfD. Trump called Vance's speech very brilliant. Bill Kristol of The Bulwark posted, "It's heartening that today the leaders of the two major parties in Germany are unequivocally anti-Nazi and anti-fascist. It's horrifying that today the President and Vice President of the United States of America are not." German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius called Vance's speech unacceptable. And on Saturday, Scholz said, "Never again fascism, never again racism, never again aggressive war. Today's democracies in Germany and Europe are founded on the historic awareness and realization that democracies can be destroyed by radical anti-democrats." Vance and the Trump administration have the support of billionaire Elon Musk in their attempt to shift the globe toward the rejection of democracy in favor of far-right authoritarianism. David Ingram and Bruno Horvath of NBC News reported today that Musk has encouraged right-wing political movements, policies, and administrations in at least 18 countries in a global push to slash immigration and curtail regulation of business. Musk, who cast apparent Nazi salutes before crowds on the day of President Donald Trump's inauguration, wrote an op-ed in favor of AfD and recently spoke by video at an AfD rally, calling it the best hope for Germany. In addition to his support for Germany's AfD, Ingram and Horvath identified Musk's support for far-right movements in Brazil, Ireland, Argentina, Italy, New Zealand, South Africa, the Netherlands, and other countries. Last month, before Trump took office, French President Emmanuel Macron accused Musk of backing a global reactionary movement and of intervening directly in elections, including Germany's. Musk's involvement in international politics appears to have coincided with his purchase of Twitter in 2022. And indeed, social media has been key to the project of undermining democracy. Russian operatives are now pushing the rise of the far right in Europe through social media, as they did in the United States. Russian President Vladimir Putin has long sought to weaken the democratic alliances of the United States and Europe to enable Russia to take at least parts of Ukraine and possibly other neighboring countries without the formidable resistance that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, would present. Russian state television praised Vance's speech. One headline read, "Humiliated Europe out for the count. Its American master flogged its old vassals." Russian pundits recognized that Vance's turn away from Europe meant a victory for Russia. Vance's speech came after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told other countries' defense ministers on Wednesday, February 12th, that he wanted to directly and unambiguously express that stark strategic realities prevent the United States from being primarily focused on the security of Europe. Since 1949, the United States has stood firmly behind the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, that said any attack on one of the signatories to that agreement would be an attack on all. Now, it appears, the U.S. is backing away. In that speech, Hegseth seemed to move the U.S. toward the ideology of Russian President Vladimir Putin, that larger countries can scoop up their smaller neighbors. He echoed Putin's demands for ending its war against Ukraine, saying that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective, and that the U.S. will not support NATO membership for Ukraine, thus conceding to Russia two key issues without apparently getting anything in return. He also said that Europe must take over assistance for Ukraine as the U.S. focuses on its own borders. On Wednesday, Trump spoke to Putin for nearly an hour and a half and came out echoing Putin's rationale for his attack on Ukraine. Trump's social media account posted that the call had been highly productive and said the two leaders would visit each other's countries, offering a White House visit to Putin, who has been isolated from other nations since his attacks on Ukraine. Also on Wednesday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent met with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky and offered U.S. support for Ukraine in exchange for half the country's mineral resources, although it was unclear if the deal the U.S. offered meant future support or only payment for past support. The offer did not apparently contain guarantees for future support, and Zelensky rejected it. On Saturday, while the Munich conference was still underway, the Trump administration announced it was sending a delegation to Saudi Arabia to begin peace talks with Russia. Ukrainian officials said they had not been informed and had no plans to attend. European negotiators have not been invited either. While the talks are being billed as early stage, the United States is sending Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, suggesting haste. After Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov spoke on Saturday, the Russian readout of the call suggested that Russia urgently needs relief from the economic sanctions that are crushing the Russian economy. It said the call had focused on removing unilateral barriers inherited from the previous U.S. administration, aiming to restore mutually beneficial trade, economic, and investment cooperation. On Friday, Russia's central bank warned that the economy is faltering, while Orban, an ally of both Putin and Trump, assured Hungarian state radio on Friday that Russia will be reintegrated into the world economy and the European energy system as soon as the U.S. president comes and creates peace. But the U.S. is not speaking with one voice. Republican leaders who support Ukraine are trying to smooth over Trump's apparent coziness with Russia. Senate Armed Services Chair Roger Wicker, a Republican of Mississippi, called out Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's rookie mistake when he offered that the U.S. would not support Ukraine's membership in NATO and that it was unrealistic for Ukraine to demand a return to its borders before Russia invaded in 2014, essentially offering to let Russia keep Crimea. Wicker said he was puzzled and disturbed by Hegseth's comments and added, "I don't know who wrote the speech. It's the kind of thing Tucker Carlson could have written, and Carlson is a fool." Carlson, a former Fox News Channel personality, has expressed admiration for Orban and Putin. "There are good guys and bad guys in this war, and the Russians are the bad guys," Wicker said. "They invaded, contrary to almost every international law, and they should be defeated. And Ukraine is entitled to the promises that the world made to it." Today, on Face the Nation, Representative Dan Crenshaw, a Republican of Texas, said, "There is absolutely no way that Donald Trump will be seen. He will not let himself go down in history as having sold out to Putin. He will not let that happen." Sarah Longwell of The Bulwark said, "I guess Republicans think this is how they manipulate Trump into doing the right thing. But Trump's been selling out to Putin since Helsinki, when he publicly sided with Putin over America's intelligence community. And he hasn't stopped selling out since. And the Republican Party lets him." European leaders reported being blindsided by Trump's announcement. German leader Scholz on Friday asked Germany's parliament to declare a state of emergency to support Ukraine. And on Sunday, European leaders met for an impromptu breakfast to discuss European security and Ukraine. Macron invited leaders to Paris on Monday to continue discussions. Representatives of Germany, Britain, Italy, Poland, Spain, the Netherlands, and Denmark will attend, as will the Secretary General of NATO and the presidents of the European Council and the European Commission. After the Munich conference, in writing from London, British journalist Nick Cohen wrote that those Americans trying to find an excuse for the betrayal of Ukraine are deluding themselves. He wrote, "The radical right in the U.S. is not engaged in a grand geopolitical strategy. It is pursuing an ideological campaign against its true enemy, which is not China or Russia, but liberalism. The U.S. culture war has gone global. The Trump administration hates liberals at home and liberal democracies abroad." Proving his point, on Saturday, after Vance's speech, Trump's social media account posted, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." This message, attributed to French dictator Napoleon Bonaparte, not only claims that the president is above all laws, but also signals to supporters that they should support Trump with violence. And that is how they took it. Right-wing activist Jack Prosobiec responded, "America will be saved. What must be done will be done." To which Elon Musk responded, "Yes." Political scientist Stathis Kalivas posted, "There is now total clarity, no matter how unimaginable things might seem. And they amount to this: the U.S. government has been taken over by a clique of extremists who have embarked on a process of regime change in the world's oldest democracy. The arrogance on display is staggering. They think their actions will increase U.S. power, but they are, in fact, wrecking their own country, and in the process, everyone else." He continued, "The only hope lies in the sheer enormity of the threat. It might awake us out of our slumber before it is too late." A year ago today, on February 16, 2024, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny died at the hands of Russian authorities in the prison where he was being held on trumped-up charges.
Letters from an American was produced at Soundscape Productions, Dedham, Massachusetts. Recorded with music composed by Michael Moss.